Welcome, History from a Hat. My name is Harry LaFontaine, and I am here once again with
Clinton, Lord Clay, ready for round two.
round two. It is. This is. I'm going to call this one Pilot Episode 2.0, and we have 81 topics left in the History from a Hat box. Giving it a shake. So we're just going to get right into this, and let's see what we got. All right, we got. Great. Rome, 753 BCE to 509 BCE. So the founding of the city to the end of the king's period.
Well, right off the bat, me is that part is a little bit hazy to me.
All right. Well, what do you know about the founding of the city?
About the only thing that I can remember off the top of my head was how they terraformed all those swamps around what would become Rome. Had to drain like nothing but marshland to build all their stuff on top of it.
Well, that's cool. That's actually something I did not know.
Yeah, like those early sewer systems were built to drain excess water from the soil because where they chose, well, you know where the hills are, right? The hilly area that it used to be.
Yeah, I just didn't know that they did any terraforming at that point in time in the middle of the 8th century BC.
Or maybe like terraforming is the incorrect word, but just a feat of engineering for people using primitive technology like they had to drain that much water to make the land livable.
Well, that is cool stuff. Yeah, I know that the original, I don't know if I want to call it a palisade. I can't think of the word, but the beginning of the city architecturally was on the Palatine Hill. I know that, and that was a result of there's the mythology that says that Romulus stood on one hill and Remus stood on another hill, and wherever the crow flew, I think it was a crow, whoever the crow flew to, that was the site that the city was going to be built upon. And Romulus and Remus as well, there's all kinds of different legend about them. They floated down the river from somewhere north of modern Rome, where Rome is located, and then they were found by a she-wolf who suckled them and all that stuff. And then it was like their uncle or something was a chieftain of some place north of Rome, and he was the one that sent them down the river. And also, there's other mythology that says they're descendant from Aeneas, who was one of the Trojans.
Oh yeah, and the legend with Aeneas abandoning Queen Dido. And that was those folk legends of why the Carthaginians and the Romans were always fighting, was because of Queen Dido's curse on him.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah, and then so there was the raping of the Sabine women. They had established the city, and people were living there and stuff, but it was like almost all men, because they were allowing like vagabonds and criminals and basically people that had been kicked out of where they were living for whatever reason, mostly crime, They were bringing those people into Rome as the early settlers, but they had no women, so they had a like a festival of something like that, big party, and had
So
invited the Sabine people, and they like messed up the men, beat up the men, maybe killed them. I don't know exactly. And then they just like took all the women and made them their wives. And that was the story of the Sabine. I think I'm saying that right.
yeah, I can barely pronounce it myself. I think it's pronounced Sabine.
Yeah, I think so.
But it could also be pronounced Sabine.
Mm. Yeah.
But basically, that early formation, that community organization was a bunch of dispossessed people from, you had like those Latin people
Mm-hmm.
and the dispossessed from the Etruscan, if you wanted to call them the Etruscan kingdom, the colony, or
Yeah,
technically you could call them an empire.
It was Etruria. Yeah, there was Etrus. That was a city state.
You had like the Sabines, the Samnites.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there were recorded maybe like 7 different ethnic groups on the Italian peninsula, not counting the Sicilians.
Yeah, something like that. I know there was a good amount of Greek colonies towards the southern region of Italy. And then there would have been Gauls and Celts up like north of the Po. So then, yeah, during that period, I know there was 7 kings total from 753 to 509. I don't know any of their names off the top of my head, except for the first king, which was Romulus, and the last king was Tarquinius. And those were, aside from Romulus, the other kings were all Etruscans. The Etruscans kind of, they were their suzerain over the city of Rome.
All surviving examples of the Etruscans are fascinating to me.
Definitely.
Whenever I was a young boy reading about it, you don't really know much about the Etruscans in like basic school books or early days of like AOL dial-up internet. I was researching the deep lore of that region, found the Etruscans, and kind of blew my mind.
Yeah, it's really awesome stuff. I know that a lot of the Roman pantheon was like this combination of the Etruscan gods and the Greek gods. And so it's like that's how those gods, like, they're the same gods, like as far as the setup, but that's the Roman gods just have different names. And then
it's like the same phenomenon that happened whenever the Ptolemaics were ruling in Egypt. They took Egyptian gods, mixed them with Greek gods, and that was the new state-sponsored religion of the Ptolemaic dynasty until Cleopatra died.
Yeah, and then there was a lot of like Isis and Osiris cult stuff going on, not only with the Ptolemies, but like that was already going on throughout Greece and other parts of that general region, like during the time of Alexander. And then so like when the Ptolemies got into Egypt, like they would have already been like intimately familiar with Isis and Osiris. So it's probably pretty easy assimilation. There was one other thing about the Etruscans that I'm trying to remember as far as their influence on early Rome.
Architecture, maybe?
Oh yeah, definitely architecture for sure. Maybe aqueducts.
I'm not sure at what time period they started forming the aqueducts, but almost they're all sneeches. Like you had the star-bellied sneeches and the plain-bellied sneeches. So they're all basically sneeches.
I remember for some reason it's hitting me that the early transportation of water, maybe this is what a sneech is because I don't know what a sneech is, but instead of being an overground like cement structure or rock stone structure bringing water, it was done underground.
Oh, the sneeches are a Dr. Seuss book.
Yeah, I had no idea. But yeah, Tarquinius, I think he was given the cognomen the Proud, and he was the last king, and he was doing all kinds of evil stuff and oppressive stuff and all that good jazz, and that's how like when he ended up, I don't think they killed him. I think they rose up and exiled him, and it was at that point in time that they supposedly founded the Republic. And but I say supposedly because the democracy in Greece was founded in 508 BCE, and so it's possible that later on the Romans decided that they were going to write into their own history that their republic was founded in 509 BCE, just so that they could be a little better than the Greeks. And I think the Romans did that quite a bit.
Oh yeah, for some reason the Latins were always just trying to one up the Greeks and Macedonians, and I mean that 20-year conflict that they had with, what was his name? I can't remember that king's name. Maybe it was Pyrrhus, King Pyrrhus.
Yeah, Pyrrhus from Epirus.
That led to them conquering Greece, but it took them 20 years to do it. But still, given the circumstances, and it's kind
it
of
took a lot longer than that to conquer Greece. But yeah, the Pyrrhic Wars for Rome were probably a good 20-year period, and that's where that term comes from, Pyrrhic victory, because he was getting wins over the Roman army in battles, but he was cannibalizing. He was like cannibalizing his own military during the process, and he couldn't raise more troops like the Romans could. But that was like in the late third century BCE, like around like after the time of the Second Punic War.
The favorite quote of mine of his is, "One more victory and I'll lose this war," or something along those lines. Yeah. And I always thought that was really funny.
Yeah. I mean, that phrase still sticks today. I mean, the Pyrrhic victory is still used today. There's a lot of people in business who know that phrase, and they'll use it knowing that it's like a costly victory is basically what it means, but they have no idea about Roman history. But that's the sticking power of that phrase, still in use.
Yeah, how all of this, the shared history of the world, and how a lot of phrases and stuff just stick in our vernacular.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always around us. You can't really escape it.
Oh yeah, definitely not. I mean, it's how we became what we've become. I lost you there for a sec. What'd you say?
You can only escape it if you want to live in a sterilized bubble.
True story.
I wouldn't recommend that.
You got anything else to add, or should I draw from the history hat?
I think we should ring the bell and draw the next lot.
Ding, ding. Let's see. Give me something good. We got... no way. Rome, 509 BCE to 218 BCE. So the founding of the Republic to Hannibal entering Italy.
You know, I just saw a Facebook post today where in Tunisia, the National Museum of Tunisia, I think, have Hannibal's armor.
Yeah, I saw that too.
And I thought that was just straight up Phoenician craftsmanship. It was beautiful. It's
Yeah,
like
definitely.
bronze breastplate.
Yeah, I mean, people who are watching this right now, they're going to be looking at it. Writing that down. All right. So the founding of the Republic in 509 BCE. So what do we know about the Republic? We have 2 consuls who are elected on a yearly basis. And we have the Senate or Senator, which I believe in Latin translates to old man. And then we have the cursus honorum, which is the like the political ladder that nobles were expected to climb. It's like you were kind of born into politics for the most part based on the renown of your family. So as in 509, or we'll just call it we'll just go to the 5th century BCE. So during that time, if you were born into a patrician family of a certain, like a certain amount of notoriety, then you were automatically going to be going up that political ladder. And it was broken down by like when you hit a certain age, you were going to be at this certain rank if your family was renowned enough, notable enough. And so like every time you hit that next age, because of that notoriety, you're like automatically getting promoted up that chain. I don't know all the ranks in it, but I know there's a edile. The ediles were they were kind of tasked with like the business of the public. So like some famous stuff for an edile would have been like what Caesar did. I know that's not the period we're on, but he borrowed lots of money while he was an edile so that he could like put on the most amount of games and provide the most amount of free food and stuff like that for the populace. And then there's the equestrian rank, which that's your primary military commander rank.
I believe that the equestrian, didn't they command mostly horsemen?
No, that is an easy thing to assume, though. It would be more akin to the guy on the horse. So if you were like a military commander of a legion and you were its what is it called? Not centurion. It's not called general. Huh?
Cataphracti?
No, I can't think of what it was, but basically the general of a legion, like the main commander of a legion. So like that guy would be on a horse, but the legion was infantry. So, but that's kind of the more practical way of looking at it. So Rome didn't really do much in terms of cavalry.
Not until, what was it, the Marius reforms?
Marius, yeah. But even then, I mean, if you go throughout the history of Roman warfare, 99% of anything that's notable involving cavalry is like Allied troops or provincial. They were provincial troops, so non-Romans.
Which, if you look at the way things change over the years, you had the equities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And eventually, over time, like after the Western Roman Empire collapsed, you still had this Gallic Roman military tradition of fighting on horseback, which is what we talked about, the Norman conquests and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Was the idea of knights and stuff was started in the middle to late Republic of Rome, and at the, well, would you call the end of the Roman Empire before its collapse a republic at that point?
Like the empire itself, you're talking about in the 5th
Yeah,
century?
like after the prior to the collapse, I know that they had the emperor and empress. They had that one empress in the Western Roman Empire, but she was the queen regent. I can't remember her name, but this was around the time that the Vandals were taking over North Africa.
Oh yeah, she was in the Eastern Empire. You're talking about Justinian's wife, Theodora. She's the first, at least as far as my memory is concerned, she's like the first major female influencer that, like, at that level. But throughout the main Roman Empire and like up until it's the, like the collapse or evolution of the West, I refer to it as an evolution because that's really what happened. But yeah, there were no female commanders, so to speak, or like something equivalent to like a commander-in-chief until Theodora. But that was in, Justinian reigned from 527 to 565. And she died in like 549 or something. Yeah, she was the queen regent for like 25 years.
The post-collapse of the Western Roman Empire was always one of those more interesting aspects of the Roman history for me, because of just how things were kind of, wouldn't necessarily call them dull, but it was everyone just so shell-shocked that they didn't know what was going on. And then before you know it, you had like another Gothic migration, and everyone's trying to get up and get away from whenever the world was cooling down. Like those like really harsh winters. And then 150 years later, you have like the establishment of Frankish kingdoms, Germans establishing small kingdoms, and everyone's just kind of scrambling to just gain some sense of security again.
Yeah, and they were building all that kind of, as far as the political structure was being built upon like pre-existing Roman political structure. So like there was, in a lot of those places, like the major cities, especially, like the Roman political structure was still in place, except the people who were filling those positions were no longer Romans. They were locals. But yeah, so let's see. During that period, so the 519 to 218, I know there was the first Punic War and the second Punic War obviously took place in there. I don't know much about the first Punic War. I know a good amount about the second Punic War, as to where the Carthaginians had a lot of land in Spain, and that's where Hannibal and Hasdrubal, I think, began kind of they were going to infiltrate into the Roman Empire from their power base in Spain, and
Didn't Hasdrubal? I thought Hasdrubal stayed in Spain.
I believe he did, and Hannibal was the one that went across southern Gaul and up to into the Alps and all that stuff. What other stuff went on in that period? Drawing a little bit of a blank. I'm a little disappointed in myself as far as like what kind of wars were taking place, because most of the most notable wars that are more popular in contemporary history took place like after Hannibal. But I know that Rome had established itself in quite a few areas by the time Hannibal went on the attack. I believe they had some territory in southern Gaul. They had Cisalpine Gaul, which is Italy from the Po River up to the Alps. That wasn't considered Italian native homeland at that time. And they had, I believe, some territory in Spain, like around Barcelona area, like near the Pyrenees Mountains. I don't know if they had much North African territory. They did have a long period of alliance with the Ptolemaic dynasty, and a lot of economic stuff going on with them, getting grain and things like that from them.
They had colonies in Sicily, I believe Sardinia.
Yep. Can't think of much else notable from that period. It's not an area of expertise for me outside of understanding that, the establishment of the Republic and kind of how that worked. There's during that time, the military was not a standing army, and it was not the kind of army that was staffed by like mass recruitment or whatever. You had to be a Roman citizen to be in the military, and you were expected to have your own protective gear, your own weaponry, as a citizen, like as an, I guess, I don't want to say upper class, but that's kind of what it is, as part of the nobility, which was there was a lot of people in that, obviously. So the young men were expected to just have that protective gear and weaponry as part of who they were as a citizen, so that when it was time for some kind of military conflict, whatever it was, then they could just basically just fill the ranks and go ahead and do what the commanders were having them do. Anything else?
I just had a brain fart. Sorry.
Oh, you're fine. Would you like to add anything else to this one?
I don't have anything.
All right. Ding, ding, ding.
I think you covered about everything.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's a lot more, but that's about the depth of my knowledge in that area, at least off the top of my head. Here we go.
I'm so rusty whenever it comes to like a lot of Roman stuff nowadays. I draw blanks.
I am pulling another piece of paper. Let's see what this one says. We've got, oh, there we go. The assassination of JFK.
Okay. Oh no. We're diving underneath the iceberg into like the dark ocean of the magic bullet.
Well, to describe the situation, I'll give a brief overview, and then you talk about it at whatever depth you want. It was November 22nd, 1963. There was a motorcade going through Dallas during the late morning, and our president was hit with a few bullets, and he died.
Now, was it Lee Harvey Oswald that shot him?
Well, no one really knows. Yeah, he's the one that got arrested, and then
Yeah, he
subsequently
was the one that got the blame for it.
Yeah, he
But
said right on television, he said, "I'm just a patsy."
Yeah, so supposedly there were 3 gunshots, right?
There were 3 gunshots.
The bullet that hit him didn't even come from the direction of where Lee Harvey Oswald was, supposedly.
That book suppository building, I think it is the 6th floor of the book suppository building. Might be the 5th floor. Might be the 4th floor, but yeah.
But it comes as no surprise that this shooting took place, maybe it might have been a week after JFK tried to implement Executive Order, I think it was 01111. And that was going to bring back the silver standard for United States currency.
Cool. And there's a couple other things that are kind of in that same vein, is that he was working to disband or abolish the CIA, and he was also working to eliminate U.S. involvement in the Vietnam conflict that was happening at that time. He was working to withdraw the United States from involvement in the Cold War. I mean, he had a lot of stuff that he was doing. Another significant thing is that he was the first Catholic president, so there was a lot of people who thought he should never be in office in the first place because he wasn't a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. What else? NASA. There was a lot of stuff going on with NASA at that time, which he was in full support of. He may have even been coming from an event in Houston in the days prior to that motorcade in Dallas. NASA-related event in Houston. Yeah.
But I don't know much else besides the only reason I know that is, researching things like the Federal Reserve and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That inevitably comes up.
Mm-hmm. And that was another thing. I don't know exactly what he was trying to do with the Federal Reserve, but he was definitely, I'll use the word interfering, even though it might not be the best word for it, but he was working so that he was basically trying to make it so that the Federal Reserve had no power or influence over government itself.
Which, I mean, they absolutely, in my opinion, shouldn't.
Of course, but, they do.
They're not even a government institution.
Oh, I know it. But, that's one of the unfortunate elements of capitalism, is that we have them closely associated with how our economic system works. Well, we can end this one here. I don't want to go into much conspiracy really with this, because there's just it's endless as far as the conspiracy, but
we should try and stay away from thought crime.
Yeah. Ringing the bell. Ding, ding, ding. What do we got? What do we got? Let's see here. We got Christopher Columbus. Thoughts?
Okay, I'm trying to come up with a good opening statement. This seems to be a sore subject for lots of people.
It does.
Christopher Columbus was not looking for the spice trade route. He was trying to find a new way to Jerusalem.
Go on.
So that's what he was doing for the crown of Spain. The idea was that the Turkish navy, the Ottoman Empire's navy, was too massive for a new crusade to be waged after the Reconquista was concluded. So on paper, they thought up a scheme that if they sailed around the world, they could hit Saudi Arabia and get Jerusalem from behind that way, supposedly, from what I read. And that is the most bonkers idea I had ever heard. They had no real idea that there was a South American continent, and this might have been prior to the Portuguese setting up those 2 fishing colonies in Canada. So they didn't even know that how massive our planet is to begin with. But then, what's all this stuff? Whenever they hit the Caribbean, and then eventually the Spanish start expanding into South America and Mexico, and then southern, what's now the United States and Florida, gets kind of goofy whenever you look at it from that angle.
Yeah, I mean, that's very good analysis of that. I appreciate it. It's more than I could have given into it. I mean, I know that when he did hit the Caribbean, I believe it's written, don't quote me on this, but he thought that he had come across like some kind of aboriginal portion of like what they considered to be India. I can't be sure about that, but they were basically like, they were as to Columbus and his men as like the Skraelings were to the Scandinavians, like in Greenland.
Now, to my understanding is that they thought that they had actually made it to India, as a lot of these people would have definitely known about Alexander the Great's expedition past the Hydaspes River and such.
Mm-hmm.
And so they saw, I believe there was like descriptions in all of those texts describing, very tan, kind of maybe short-statured people. And in India, they would paint their faces and wear loose clothing if they were wearing clothing. And so their idea was that was the only exposure to what India was through second, third-hand accounts that have been translated, maybe from Greek to Egyptian into Latin and then into Spanish, or staying in Latin if they could read Latin. So third, fourth hand translations of texts from maybe 2,000 years prior to their birth. That was the only thing that they would have known about what India was like. And so it's not really surprising that they would assume that's where they were, because they didn't know that like the if you want to call the Caribbean maybe an archipelago or that chain of islands,
Yeah, it's like fractal island mass kind of. Yeah,
And then
it's
they found
definitely not
out that,
surprising. It's definitely not surprising that they assumed it was India because I mean there are maps and they're incomplete. You know, it just kind of makes sense that that's what they would have thought. Should I ring the bell on this one? We can do one more and then we'll be done with this episode.
okay, I don't think I have necessarily anything to add other than the silver lining is that we now have garlic, mashed potatoes, and marinara sauce as a result of this discovery.
Yeah, tomatoes. It's yeah, it's funny how like tomatoes are so deeply associated with uh, authentic Italian food and authentic Spanish food. But yeah, what people don't know is that the tomato wasn't introduced into Europe until after Columbus.
Oh yeah, and chocolate and
Mm-hmm.
tobacco.
Mm-hmm.
So, viewers, if you like to eat Hershey bars and chain smoke cigarettes, you can blame Columbus for that.
All right, ringing the bell, ding, ding, ding. Give it a shake. This is going to be the last one. Let's see what we got. All right, we got Scythians.
Scythians?
Scythians.
Scythian?
Yep.
Scythians, yeah. Okay.
Scythians. Okay.
Um, I'm not too familiar with that group of people other than I believe their association with the Sarmatians.
Mm-hmm.
And one factoid I know about them is that women in Sarmatia would cut one of their breasts off and cauterize it so that they wouldn't have it in the way when they were shooting off horseback.
Outstanding.
So you had like a culture of uh, equestrian people that condone female warriors, and they would mutilate themselves so that they could fight more efficiently with the men.
That is fantastic.
Also, the in folklore, the Amazonian women that Hercules battled with, more than likely Sarmatians.
That's cool. Yeah, when I think of Scythians, my mind goes to a few different places. Like I know they were descendant from the area from around what would be like just northwest region of like where the Great Wall of China is, and those peoples, which were their descendants, they were the ones that they were raiding into China like way back, 2000 BC time frame, and they were the ones that kind of they forced the Chinese to start putting up a series of walls and a system of barricades that eventually became what we know as the Great Wall. But it was many different walls to guard the population against these raiders. And then also in the spirit of that same line of thought with, yeah, they were people of the steppe. They were nomadic. The horse was a major part of their culture in many different ways. And born from that culture were the Huns. And then later born from that culture were the Mongols.
So one thing, and it's a little bit off topic, is that around the time of the 5 barbarian uprisings in the Jin Dynasty era of China, was that the nomadic horse peoples that came in after the Three Kingdoms era to replace all the millions that died in those wars, is whenever those barbarians rose up, the indigenous Han Chinese were trying to fight them off with their own people, and it all came down to their diets. So you had like conscript spearmen trying to fight these men on horseback, but these spearmen were fed off of grains and bread and stuff. So they were carb adapted people fighting protein adapted people that were more mobile. So the nomadic people were leaner, they had more muscle mass, and they weren't suffering the same amount of tooth decay as these carb adapted people of the Han Chinese were. And so dozens of armies just got steamrolled by these mobile armies of these nomadic people.
Yeah, interesting. Very cool. I know that within that society as well, just making that kind of along the same lines of the comparison you were making, is that the nomadic people were kind of like, well, the men especially, they were becoming hunters and training to be warriors from early childhood, and it was just their way of life. And then they were coming into close quarters combat with sedentary people who were in more agricultural societies where hunting and fighting just wasn't a major part of how they existed.
So that's always like an interesting thing to look at in history, is nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
And something that makes me appreciate that now I don't have to worry about being deficient in vitamins. I can go down and get vitamins from a grocery store now. So,
right.
To our viewers, if you think you're having a bad day, just remember, you can go to Rite Aid and buy some vitamins and it'll be okay.
All right. Well, on that note, we're going to wrap this up. It's been fun. I really enjoyed doing this, and I can't wait to get another one in. And so, well, thank you, Lord Clay.
And thank you for having me. I can't wait for episode 3.
Right on, man. All right. I will. We will see you next time.